Hi, everyone. I am Courtney Brown, Director of Farsight. This intelligence briefing is specifically designed for administrators and instructors within academia, specifically within college and university settings. My hope is that this briefing will be heard by many of the most important influencers in the academy. If you are a professor or instructor or lower-level administrator in the academy who has the ability to persuade higher-level administrators and or influencers within the academy to watch this, it would be in everyone's best interest to do so, as I will explain as we continue. Remember, whether or not my ideas are accepted by the majority of mainstream academia, I myself am an academic, so I speak as a voice originating from within the academic community, even if it is a solitary voice. Much of the information that I will go over in this briefing will be new to members of the academy. I ask that you bear with me until I get to the end. Academics can sometimes be very impatient people, willing to dismiss new ideas with stunning rapidness when those ideas conflict with their own favored assumptions of how they think the world works or should work. Academics label their most cherished collections of ideas as science, and they strictly limit the ideas that they allow to share that label. Well, like it or not, academics are intellectual gatekeepers, and the dilemma of all gatekeepers is that they always run the risk of disallowing the consideration of good information as well as bad information. So let me offer this light-hearted advice. As I continue, try to keep an open mind. There are three major elements that I must address today: remote viewing, extraterrestrial life, and humanity's current condition and dilemma. Beginning with remote viewing, or non-physical perception, it is generally assumed throughout nearly all of the academy that remote viewing is impossible. The basic belief within the academy is that only that which is physical is possible, and the transference of non-physical perception across time and space is dismissed as an imaginary thing left to the realm of pseudoscience. Well, according to this highly integrated academic belief system, only unscientific people believe in anything related to remote viewing. The idea that remote viewing can exist, and especially that it can be mastered to a high level of accuracy with considerable training and effort, is simply ludicrous from a traditional academic perspective. There are a great many research studies that demonstrate beyond any standard level of criteria, statistical or otherwise, that this belief in the impossibility of non-physical perception is simply incorrect. These studies can normally be published only in non-mainstream outlets due to a peer review gatekeeper system that disallows their publication in more mainstream outlets. Now, Carl Sagan voiced this near-religious belief system best when he claimed that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. But this adage is not tenable, and it is not scientific. From a scientific perspective, it is the same as moving the alpha level of a statistical test to whatever arbitrary level is desired to avoid accepting a result. An alpha level of 0.05 is meaningless to such thinking, even though it is acceptable with respect to more favored ideas. The same is true for an alpha level of 0.01 or 0.001 or 0.0001, or however many zeros you want to put after the decimal point. Alpha levels are used to avoid rejecting currently held views that we assume to be correct unless proven otherwise, what we scientists like to call null hypotheses. Well, rejecting a true, currently held view is called a type 1 error, and avoiding type 1 errors is a good thing. But arbitrarily moving the alpha level of a test is not science. Changing the rules of the game whenever desired is not science. Carl Sagan's adage does exactly this, and when it is voiced by people holding PhDs, society tends to take such opinions seriously and to accept such opinions without debate. This is the power that academics hold over society. Usually academics use their voices helpfully and productively. They guide the belief systems of the masses. What academics don't fully accept is that they can also hurt people when they reject very different new ideas that nonetheless are correct. In scientific jargon, these are called type 2 errors. Scientists focus on avoiding type 1 errors, and they don't often worry about type 2 errors, despite the fact that when they move the alpha level of a test arbitrarily while reciting Carl Sagan's mantra in a desperate attempt to avoid rejecting a currently held view, the probability of making a type 2 error increases dramatically, and very valid and important new ideas are rejected. The basic assumption underlying the dismissal of remote viewing as a real phenomenon is that it is impossible for anything, including information, to travel instantaneously across time and space. Science considers information as something real. It is not just something that you think about. In an isolated system, when something that is organized in any way falls apart and the organization vanishes, energy is released. So information is a form of energy, and energy is interchangeable with matter, and so remote viewing appears to be able to send energy, and thus matter, across time and space. And from a traditional scientific perspective, this is impossible. Of course, that does not make it impossible in real terms. It is just impossible from the traditional scientific perspective. And if the gatekeepers in the academy are not willing to consider that this belief is wrong, then where are we to go after that? The second major element that I must address today is the subject of extraterrestrial life. As with remote viewing, there is a basic assumption held by many members of the Academy that extraterrestrial life, if it exists at all, can't get to us here on Earth. The distances are too great, and there is a speed of light limitation such that nothing can travel faster than the speed of light. And it would take unimaginable levels of energy and time for an extraterrestrial spaceship to get to Earth. Well, this belief is not too dissimilar to the previously widespread belief among the astronomical community prior to 1995 that the probability of there being planets around other stars is very unlikely. They claimed that the specific conditions needed for large planets to form out of the primordial solar nebula are simply too unique, too rare. Well, 1995 is the date when astronomers detected their first planet around another star, and planets have been discovered regularly since then, of course. But we too often forget our history, especially the stubborn history of our incorrect ideas. The belief that other planetary systems would be exceptionally rare in our galaxy and universe was never scientific. The only scientific claim would have been the mean. And before 1995, we had a sample of one solar system, our own, and that solar system had 9 major planets, an asteroid belt, comets, meteors, and all sorts of solar system junk all over the place. So the only scientific claim that could have been made until more information was obtained, through whatever means, would have been that the average number of planets around any star was approximately 9. That mean could later be adjusted as new discoveries are made and the sample size increases. But that is not what happened prior to 1995. That is not what was taught in many college and university classes back then. Connecting this to the subject of extraterrestrial life, we have a planet with literally billions of life forms, and for us to say that life is probably not existing in other solar systems is not scientific. The only prediction that we can make from a scientific perspective is the mean. In our sample of one planet in our solar system, we have billions of life forms, at least one of which is highly intelligent and technologically advanced. Until we have more data from other solar systems, that is our mean, and that is what we must predict with regard to other similarly configured solar systems from a scientific perspective. Connecting this with remote viewing, if remote viewing can transfer information across time and space, even reliably and accurately by highly trained practitioners, then it is possible to transfer both energy and matter across time and space in a manner that is not limited by the relativistic limit of the speed of light. We are talking about a new understanding of physics, and indeed the ultimate generalization of quantum mechanics, where such things appear to happen, to the macro world. But I don't want to get into the specifics of theoretical arguments here, although I have spoken and written about this elsewhere. Right now, I want to focus on the more general ideas that are preventing the Academy, widely defined, from moving forward. If, over the billions of years that this galaxy has existed, one can assume that eventually civilizations developed the science and technology to travel interstellar distances quickly, then the idea of us sitting on an isolated planet Trying to listen for distant radio signals as a gatekeeper test that might exist that life exists out there in the galaxy is nearly ludicrous. If civilizations can learn how to travel interstellar distances quickly, then they would likely act as humans do on Earth. They would travel, conquer, and colonize. In short, Earth humans trying to detect them on their home planets as the only acceptable proof of their existence is really weird. They would already be here, and those Earth humans who know about such extraterrestrials are simply trying to keep everyone else in the dark for their own reasons. Moreover, the goal of those extraterrestrial civilizations would not be to wake Earth humans up and make us galactic citizens. The goal of such extraterrestrial galactic travelers would be to control colonial assets with the most economical means possible. Indeed, that is where we are right now. The big problem is that there is a huge resistance within both the mainstream media, government, and the academy to publicly acknowledge this. If you stay with me a bit longer, I will explain how we can resolve this problem in a way that should be acceptable to nearly all college administrators. But first, this brings us to the last major element that I need to address today, humanity's current condition and dilemma. Look at our world today. We have a polarized world that is deeply conflicted. Our nations are armed to the teeth with weapons capable of destroying this planet. As before, the only prediction that we can scientifically make is the mean. Using the mean from our sample of one planet, Earth, we must assume that the rest of the galaxy is much like Earth. Making only the assumption that interstellar travel is possible among extraterrestrial civilizations with high levels of technology, there must be groupings among the galactic civilizations, groupings which are defended using extremely potent weaponry. As above, so below. Those guys up there must be like us down here, unless proven otherwise. You cannot assume anything other than what we see here on Earth. You cannot assume that our space brothers and sisters are all benevolent and that humans on Earth are the only warlike creatures in this universe. Until you have more data, you can predict only the mean, no matter how large the current sample size. So, for the sake of argument, let us say that the Milky Way galaxy is alive with all sorts of life, and that extraterrestrials are already among us in this solar system, and that governmental and select commercial and even academic elements are aware of this. Remember what was said by Haim Eshed, former head of Israel's Defense Ministry Space Directorate, former general and current respected professor. To summarize, he said that extraterrestrial UFOs exist, and their occupants have signed agreements with some governments to give them permission to operate on and around Earth. The extraterrestrials who signed those agreements do not want information regarding their presence or their activities to be made public. In short, there is active collaboration between the United States government and some other governments to work with some extraterrestrials and to keep that collaboration a secret. What Haim Eshed has not said is that the extraterrestrial community is highly divided and armed to their teeth. Moreover, not everyone would agree that the ETs who signed those agreements are the good guys. Indeed, our work at Farsight indicates just the opposite. Our governments are working with the bad guys. For anyone who has even a casual interest in UFOs or UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, it is obvious that there has been a recent upsurge in the number of sightings of such phenomena worldwide of late. Moreover, photographic evidence is increasingly of really great quality. Images and video are being spread using social media in great abundance now, and this process is accelerating. Mainstream science continues to ignore all of this, but it is happening nonetheless. Some of the extraterrestrials, the ones who we at Farsight would call the good guys, are trying to push for disclosure, and governments and the mainstream are fighting to delay that. Indeed, there is a fierce struggle going on behind the scenes. Every time you hear of someone in Congress calling for a new committee to study the phenomenon, or of the military saying that they will create a new task force to examine the issue, that is all just one more step in a nonstop strategy of delay. It is impossible for the U.S. military not to know everything about the extraterrestrials, their spaceships, and their conflicts. That is simply impossible unless you assume a level of military incompetence that is simply beyond belief. The only thing that is possible is that the military itself is highly divided on the issue of disclosure, and that major struggles are going on behind the scenes. So, let's refocus on the issues relating to the academy. Colleges and universities are not paradigm busters. They are economic aggregators who amass funds to support research into scientific realms. Funding non-mainstream ideas risks angering those who would send money in the direction of academic institutions, and academic administrators are loath to risk anything that might disrupt this flow of money, or their own careers would be jeopardized. So the incentives relating to the flow of money conflicts with the desire to break down obsolete paradigms. Until ideas become accepted by the mainstream, colleges and universities would not normally support such research. So we have a bit of a catch-22 phenomenon. Paradigm-busting ideas cannot be supported by the academy until they are supported by the mainstream. But the mainstream is loath to support ideas that conflict with cherished prior assumptions on which careers have been established. So, where does that leave us? Here is the situation in blunt terms. While colleges and universities are not paradigm busters, people are paradigm busters, and usually this means rare or select individuals who dare to fight the intellectual battles. Now, at this point, it should be obvious to even the casual observer that change is in the winds. At some point, the dam will break, disclosure will happen, and colleges and universities will have to adapt. Institutions will soon be faced with the prospect of rearranging their own internal houses in order to adapt to the new realities that will be thrust upon them. And this will affect not just the physical sciences, but the social sciences as well, and even the humanities. So where does that lead us now? Right now. At Farsight, we have begun to expand our activities to include demonstrating to others how to obtain physical evidence of the extraterrestrial presence on Earth. Well, it turns out that extraterrestrial spaceships use stealth technology to fly in the Earth environment. Stealth tech that requires specialized camera equipment to capture it. These ships also fly extremely fast, so fast that only advanced camera equipment can capture their movements. So we had to wait until commercially available tech became available that could overcome these two things. Long story short, at Farsight we now use specially modified cameras and high-end software to capture video evidence of extraterrestrial spaceships operating in Earth's atmosphere. It turns out that such ships operate in enormous numbers, and they can be captured on video during the middle of the day just about everywhere all the time. We at Farsight are publishing not only our own videos of such crafts, but also showing people how to take their own videos of these vehicles. You might say that we are democratizing scientific discovery in this field. We are now seeing that others are able to follow our instructions to successfully make their own recordings of such vehicles. Using this verifiable data, obtained with our own cameras and equipment, at Farsight we are combining this with remote viewing under blind and defendable conditions to perceive inside the vehicles, to describe who the occupants are, what they are doing, and where they are going. So, I am making the following offer to the academic community. If invited, I am willing to travel to colleges and universities to explain such things. I suggest that I give a talk to the academics and administrators who work at such colleges and universities, and I can also work with groups of individuals chosen by the universities in a one-day workshop to show them how to take video recordings of the extraterrestrial spacecraft with their own or university-owned cameras, and how to process those recordings using appropriately configured university computer equipment. The talk would likely be quite lively, in the sense that I would entertain questions from academics who might be very vocal in their support and or skepticism regarding the topics I have discussed today, and that is okay. I am willing to go through that, however comfortable or uncomfortable that may be. But the workshop with instructional activities should be separate, and they should be monitored by university personnel to ensure that there is no disruption to the flow of information. I do not want to fight battles while instructing people on how to use the cameras and computer equipment. I only want to show how it is done at that time. I would bring my own camera equipment to record the spacecraft on video and my own high-end laptop where I can demonstrate to the live audience in an auditorium setting with a normal projector how to analyze the footage. I would ask for no financial compensation for this 1 or 2 day visit, and the only thing you would have to supply me with is normal travel expenses, reasonable hotel accommodations, and food that is appropriate for me to eat. I propose that this can assist college and university communities in adjusting to the coming changes. You do not have to endorse what I do or say. I only ask that you listen to the ideas, allow your academic members to ask me questions, and let me teach your community how to obtain their own video evidence that supports what I say. Once the communities see that the existence of the ET spaceships is a real thing based on their own images taken with their own cameras, then they will see that the secrecy agenda is very real, and they will be more open to the other things that we do at Farsight, such as remote viewing. This can buffer the college and university communities and their institutions from the disruptions that will result from the coming process of disclosure. It never hurts to be prepared. Academic administrators will naturally ask who else might be able to do what I have just offered. To be blunt, there is no one else who can do this except me currently. While I do not do remote viewing research or research relating to extraterrestrial life at my university, I nonetheless am the only full-time and tenured academic on this planet who can talk about such matters. There have been other academics who have ventured into this realm variously defined, such as the now retired Professor David M. Jacobs of Temple University and the deceased Professor John Mack of Harvard University. They all paid heavy professional prices for allowing themselves to think and to publish on such matters. I too have paid a heavy professional price for the activities which I have done outside of my university and for the ideas that I have entertained over the years. Nonetheless, the time has come for members of the larger academic community to hear about the research done at Farsight. The time has come for academic administrators to recognize that it would be strategically helpful for them to prepare their own communities for the coming changes. You don't want the financial donors of the future to be angry with you for not seeing this coming. You don't want such donors pulling their funds from your institutions because they blame you for not seeing what will eventually become obvious. You want to protect yourselves as administrators, and you want to protect your institutions. Nothing protects you and institutions more than by allowing a conversation to take place. In return, you can claim that you have supported the beneficial future of humanity by being a venue for the open discussion of ideas. It's a win-win situation with little risk to yourselves or your institutions. Insurance, if you want to think of it in those terms. But it is also fun and it's interesting in its own right. Disclosure is no longer a fringe issue. It is now a strategy for the future. Now, I have a special request. If you are an instructor, professor, or lower-level administrator in a college or university setting, it would be greatly helpful if you would forward the link for this intelligence briefing to a higher-level administrator in your institution, such as a dean, department chair, provost, or college, or university president. It is highly unlikely that such administrators will stumble upon this briefing all by themselves. I have found that such administrators normally do not spend much time on social media. But if you could forward this briefing to them, plus an encouragement to watch it, it would be greatly helpful to getting the message to the right place. Then, if they want to pursue this further, they know how to contact me. Thank you for listening. I am Courtney Brown, Director of Farsight.